It's all coming together for me now. I've got Tim thinking about it.
Welcome to the Juiceless Chronicles, a weekly podcast concerning the mundane, interesting, and maybe even sometimes dramatic happenings of a simple fantasy baseball dynasty league. This podcast chronicles the thoughts and musings of Greg, Joe, Jack, and Tim, 4 of the 10 owners of the league. Welcome to Episode 5, The Art of the Deal. Okay, we have Greg, Jack, Joe, and myself, Tim, all 4 of us back in action this week. I know we'd been a trio the last couple of weeks, so I'm really happy to have the quartet back. And taking a look at the Week 2 games, we had some interesting games last week, starting off with Jack's Wax Packs beating the Dreamers 44.8 points to 37.5 points. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you know we've been big fans of the Dreamers. And in reality, the Dreamers, did not perform, underwhelmed there. We had in another game, Funkin' Punks and the Omission Commission. The Funkin' Punks, LJ, one of only 2-0 teams, wiped out the Omission Commission 42 to 31.3. Another early season darling of ours, just not producing whatsoever. We had Bad Street and Lethal Injection, the Battle of the Breens. Lethal just crushing Bad Street. Lethal dropped 45.6 points. Bad Street only put up 37.8 points, so not much of a contest there at all. Last week, we were talking about 47 Ronin and Smokeland Pathetic, my team, 47 Ronin, and Greg's team, Smokeland Pathetics. Again, Greg started out hot, and the Pathetics just really cooled down, and the Cubs really hurt. Overall score, Ronin 50.65 to Smokeland 36.3. And then Reardon Metal, Joe's team, and St. Locash Marauders. We talked about St. Locash taking a tough loss last week. This week, or this past week, week 2, beating Ritter Meadow 46.6 to 43.9. Joe, we talked about the tough division. So, guys, as we take a look at this, we have 2-0 teams. We have the Funkin' Punks in the Champions Division, and we have Lethal Injection in B Division. Soon to be maybe Bullwinkle Division. We don't know yet. We'll talk a little more about that later. But impressions as you look at the standings and the scores last week.
Well, what became clear to me is that the collective group of us on this podcast really don't know what the hell we're talking about. I mean, every team that we've either identified as a solid contender and or a team that might be on the rise or a surprise flopped last week. You look at the undefeated teams in our league as we stand after 2 weeks, and I don't think we had a lot of in-depth conversation about either of those 2-0 teams. And so it goes to the unpredictability of baseball, I think, and especially April baseball.
It's early, as usual, but yes, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the Champions Division, and probably about 10% of that time talking about the Funkin' Punks, who are currently 2-0 and the only 2-0 team in that division. So that is a bit of a surprise. And they're scoring points too. I mean, they're another, again, Chris losing the first week in a tough one, but had a very good week this week. So he's kind of surprised me a little bit. Mike, Lethal Injection being 2-0. Again, I don't think anybody picked him as an elite per se. I think everybody picked them out of that division. So we knew that they had a strong team. So that's not as big of a surprise to me. And then, of course, the other surprise is I think a couple of us at least picked Reardon Metal, and they started out 0-2 as well. So
it looks like soon to be 0-3. I think it's, obviously it's still early. I mean, there's 13 points separates the teams, points for in this, throughout the entire league. The top scoring team is Tim, which is within the realm of what we expected at 107.2, and that can't be right. Greg is the lowest scoring team. Wow. So, but still, it's less than 13 points at this point.
What feels different from me than past years, and I can readily admit that it might be because we're having this podcast and engage in these weekly conversations, but what feels different to me is that in past years, I was always looking at, to be honest, at Tim and Jack and their teams, and those were the two teams that I kind of said, well, they're the standard. Those are the ones that I'm chasing, and I wasn't wrong. We were all kind of in the middle of the pack, and there was one or two teams who you didn't expect much from, but this year it feels like it is anyone's game after the first 2 weeks. And I don't mean that, I know it's early, but I mean that looking at the rosters and looking at the major league performances of some of these teams, and I think that's going to reflect on their players, it feels much more up for grabs this year.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we did talk about that in our preseason work about how much competition there is in this league. I do want to point out the breakdown stat, which is, for me, one of the most important stats, because it levels out on any given week, where would you have been against everybody else in the league? And St. Locash really has been, in the first 2 weeks, the best team overall. They are number one team against every other team in the league. So you take their score, put it against everybody else's score, where would they be? And I think that helps true up some of the early season kind of shaking there. Lethal is sitting there at 8. And then the other Dreamers are the 9th. So, you've got some teams there that have been scoring good, and maybe they just ran into a buzzsaw. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Well, and that's true. And I'm just still looking at the standings, and you look at a team like Mike, who's scored as many points as anybody, but he's had fewer than 90 points scored against him. And then you look at a team like Pops, who's sort of somewhere in the middle in points scored for him, but he's had 115 points scored against him. That's running into that hot team on the wrong week.
It's it's interesting. I'm looking at it as well, and like Tim said, we've always been a fan of the power poll, and then like he said, ultimately the breakdown. Obviously, St. Locash. It's just if someone had asked, if we had started, we did start before the season talking about who was going to be where, and St. Locash wasn't in a whole lot of the conversations. The Marte situation, if they weren't going to come back down to earth anyway, that's not going to help them. So. It's interesting. It's early. When you're not doing well, the phrase "it's early" goes longer and longer into the season. I don't know if you guys are with that. So I've been known to say it's early in week 12 at sometimes, but my squad is I may be in some trouble here. I don't see myself. I may be in some trouble in this division.
Well, and I dare say that we might be seeing in its second year of its existence, the real effects of the Champions Division versus the other divisions. The 4 teams in the Champions Division just teeing off on one another these first 2 weeks. Last year it was a new convention, and this may be the first full year where that weighs into our strategy as we manage our teams throughout the year.
So here's what we have, guys. We had several pickups over the week, so I'd love to get your take on that. I'm just going to run through them real quick, and then you can kind of take us back to whichever one you like. We had Jose Reyes was dropped by St. Locash. We had Shohei Ohtani added by the Dreamers. We had Jason Worth dropped. We had Jason Castro. I'm sorry. Jason Worth was added. Thank you. Smokeland added Jason Worth.
Saying he was dropped because you're used to saying that so often. But this time,
well, he was dropped for him to pick him up.
Desperate times.
Jason Worth, man. Hey, by the way, who has the best batting average on the Cubs so far? It's Jason Hayward. Jason Castro, the catcher, was added, and Chris Herman was dropped to make room for him. That's Herman with 2 N's. Lethal Injection picked up Eric Thames, who was on fire. Delino DeShields was dropped to make room for him. 47 Ronin dropped Hunter Dozier and then picked up Billy Hamilton in a trade. Bad Street picked up Eddie Martinez and Austin Riley, a couple of youngsters. Bad Street also on the next day, picked up Ryan Healy and Justin Upton. I think Ryan Healy was a subject of our conversations a couple of weeks ago. That's interesting. And in that very same trade, Jack's Wax Pack picked up Evan Longoria. Congratulations, Jack. I know you've been trying for that for a while. Mickey Maniac and Javier Baez. 47 Ronin added Jaimier Candelario, and Bad Street. Actually, that's this week, so we won't even go into that.
Well, I think easily the most, sexy, if you will, pickup of the week was Ohtani.
Yeah, let's talk a little about that. So, Shohei Ohtani, the Japanese Babe Ruth. Does anybody know more about him than I do? Because I've actually done some.
I know about him. I actually scouted him, and I thought about drafting him because, he's, what is he, 22 or 23? He's a starting pitcher with electric stuff. He's pretty dominant over in that league. But he's like a high school player. On the days that he's not on the mound, he's out in the outfield, and he's knocking the ball around. He hits for average. He hits for power. He seems like the real deal. So, could he be a revolutionary player? We've seen in the last couple of years some relief pitchers who could swing the bat and pinch hit and play the field a little bit. But could this guy be one of those players who, either as a reliever or as a starter, is an everyday player, but once a week or twice a week pitcher? Is that possible?
Maybe. I don't see it as a reliever. I think he'd have to be a starter in order to obviously to be able to regulate it. If it just seems, you're right, it would be revolutionary. It just seems so non-MLB. Maybe he goes to maybe an American League team, maybe DHs on his days off. I know he's capable of playing the field as well, but it just seems like as protective as teams are on those arms, and as polished as his seems to be as early as it is, I just don't see him putting him out there. It's an interesting concept. I'm same as you, Greg. I know the guy. I saw him. I did not take a chance on him. It's interesting.
Imagine the double switch possibilities though in the National League. He's out there in right field, and you got a guy struggling, so he comes in, pitches to a right-handed batter, and then they bring in a left-handed guy, and he goes back out to the outfield. Imagine the double switch possibilities.
Is that league? Can you pitch and then go back to a position?
Sure. I mean, like late inning games, I've seen. They'll have a left-handed and right-handed pitchers in the game, and they'll move them from left to right depending on who's at bat, so that they can keep them in the game.
Is he a better hitting prospect or pitching prospect?
They say that he has better stuff. I'm sorry, Jack. They say he has better stuff than you, Darvish.
Yep.
And could win a batting title in the MLB.
Okay, but given the value of pitching in the major leagues,
Right.
is there really a major league team that's going to risk him in the field if he's that good as a pitcher?
Right. That's why I think the focus will be pitching. That's why I said maybe an American League team. You'd be with an American League team, and then it'd almost be silly not to run him out there every now and then and let him swing the bat. I mean, the guy's got pop.
Yeah, well, okay, so why don't they run Madison Bumgarner out there as a DH once a week?
Well, because they're NL. They don't have the opportunity.
Okay, so he's playing an American League team. Why don't they do that?
I don't think Baumgartner cares. The interesting thing about this guy, at least at this point, and again, he's 22. At this point, he's saying he would only sign with an MLB team that would allow him to pitch and play in the field on a regular basis.
But when did the rules change about Japanese players? I always thought that they didn't allow them to even try to be in MLB until they were like 27 or 28 or something.
The word is that when he was going to go directly to the MLB, and what happened was this team came in. I can't remember what team it is. Greg, I don't know if you know the team. Is it the Tigers?
Yeah, the Nippon Ham Fighters.
Nippon Ham Fighters. And the agreement is that he could go to the MLB anytime he wanted. So it's not like when an MLB team had to post and go through all this work, and there were certain rules in the Japanese league, that he actually worked this into his contract with the intention of being able to do that.
So I'm looking at his stats from last year, guys. His age 21 season, just his batting stats. He had 323 at bats, almost 400 plate appearances. He hit 22 home runs, 67 RBIs. He walked 50 times. His batting average was 322, and his OPS was 1,000.
Baumgartner ain't got none of that.
And here's his pitching stats. So on his 21-age season, he was 10-4 with a 1.86 ERA. He started 20 games.
Nasty.
Yeah.
Like I said, I feel. Was he adamant about playing the field or getting?
Yeah. No, about doing both. He wants to do both. He had 140 innings pitched, and he had, he allowed 89 hits in 140 innings, and he struck out 174 batters.
Yeah. I don't. That's going to be tough.
No, I think money might talk. They might say, "Hey, listen, we love your enthusiasm, and we'll give you some at bats. But listen, buddy, if you can just dampen your enthusiasm to troll right field, we're going to give you $20 million a year." That may change his mind, but right now, I mean, like Brian Price for the Reds saying he's just going to do what it takes to win.
Yeah.
Is there no team that would say, "Hell, why wouldn't we do this?"
Yeah, it very well may be the case. We may be seeing something, a new situation here. That'd be interesting.
Do you think it will be an established, typically a perennially good team that does it, or do you think it's going to be a team that wants to try something new?
I see it being a great marketing.
Right. I think maybe a poorer team that could utilize the marketing. I could see that more.
Like a smaller market team, or
well, they have to be able to afford them. But yes.
Novelty sells tickets too.
In other words, if I'm the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Cubs, then I can't really afford to play around too much, in that situation. If I'm the Reds, wait,
that's actually not a bad.
Somebody like that taking a chance, selling tickets, so on and so forth. Seems like you'd be a little bit more creative at that point with less to lose, I guess, if that makes sense.
Before we switch segments, Jack, I'd like to ask you about this trade. I mean, 5 players moved. Ryan Healy was someone we've talked about quite a bit. You talked about Upton. You've been talking about Longoria. Is this just the the culmination of a long-term trade, or was this something that came up quickly and you just moved on it quickly?
Okay. So we have been talking actually for a while. Actually, Upton and Longoria were in talks for quite a bit, even before the season. Honestly, if you remember, before the season started, last year David Murphy was my middle infield. Middle infield. Did I say David? Middle infielder, and he was my backup third baseman. So now he has no more third base qualification. So I literally came into the season with just Franco of the Phillies. I had no backup. So I was trying to trade in the offseason. Again, ended up getting offered guys like Jose Reyes, who I see here on the drop list, and such. So I was talking at that point about Upton and Longoria and a deal. I decided when I saw Healy available, I decided I would just wait and draft Healy and use him as my backup. and then I panicked and got rid of all of it and decided that Franco, I didn't want to depend on Franco. If he does good, I'll be happy because he's a Philly. But if he does poor, I can't be mad because he's a Philly and he's blowing it for my fantasy team. So the other factors in that trade are Baez, which I think last time we were all together, I told you guys I was going to go get, and I got. I do like him long term, and my wife thinks Evan Longoria is hot, so that had something to do with it as well. So those three things combined. Upton, I expect again to be a solid guy, but he's very unpredictable, and I just don't want to deal with that this year. So
does Amanda think he's hot with the shaved head and facial, the big beard? Or
not as less hot now. He was hotter before, but still hot. Yes.
Got it. Okay. All right. Because if I'm not mistaken, she thought she thought a Philly player was hot, and he had a great freaking career. Yeah, exactly. So I think she knows what she's talking about. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little about Major League Baseball. Okay, gentlemen, welcome back. I want to take a look at the start of the MLB season. What have you noticed? What have you picked up from the first few weeks of games, and any surprises for you? And then I think a little later in the segment, we're going to talk about the fantasy impacts. So, Greg, as you take a look at the MLB season, what are some things that really popped out at you?
Well, I mean, I think for most part, the races aren't all that surprising. It's so early in the season. But big exceptions to me are the National League Central and the National League West. You know, the Central, Cincinnati's off to a great start. And it's one of those things, like, you know, they didn't go out and spend any money. So there's certain teams that are off to a better start that you can kind of justify it based upon their off seasons, but not so much the Reds. And so, you know, I start to wonder if that Brian Price strategy of, you know, using his pitching staff, you know, in a more innovative way, if that's going to bear fruit for them. And then looking at the National League West with the Rockies and the Diamondbacks on top. You know, again, young teams, talent, some willingness to spend money there. But I expected them not to be terrible. But I really thought, you know, based upon the offseason's pitching staff changes for the Giants and the Dodgers' recent, you know, ways of building that team, I really thought it would be the Giants and Dodgers. And again, it's early, but boy, you can't deny the starts that those three teams have had.
It's the interesting thing is, and again, we all have to assume that the Rockies will implode, right? But they got Dahl coming back, they got Desmond coming back. Story hasn't even really started hitting assuming that he does. They're an interesting one. Again, it's hard to believe, but they get those guys back and hitting. Who knows how far they could go.
One surprise, I guess, on the other end of the spectrum for me was the Blue Jays. Really, again, so early, but I expected them to be really this almost to be their year, and at least thus far it hasn't been. And I guess that's what you get when you depend upon Francisco Liriano to be a mainstay of your rotation.
Do you believe in the adage you can lose a pennant in April, but you can't win a pennant in April?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
I do not.
You think it's just math? I mean, they're 3-11 right now.
You got to win enough games to win your division. It doesn't matter when you win them. I think it says more about how far you're going to go in the playoffs when you win them.
I just the attitude matters, and it's hard to start out 3-11. And I was going to say Toronto must miss Encarnacion, but it looks like Cleveland's missing him too. So
I told Tim he wouldn't like playing in Ohio. Yeah, he didn't as a Red.
Yeah, well, he
good observation.
I went back and looked at his Aprils for the last 4 years, and this is routine. So whether you're in southern Canada, southeastern Canada, or in Ohio, so we'll see when May starts. Then we'll kind of we'll talk about it. But he had a dinger. I think he hit a dinger yesterday or today. So hopefully that stroke will come along. We'll see.
It's interesting though, Tim. Your question about winning, losing the pennant in April. Not respectfully, Joe. The thing that I think is interesting though is when teams. How they manage their farm teams or who they choose to bring up. I was watching the Pirates-Cardinals broadcast, and there was the Cardinals home broadcast team. And the Cardinals are off to a less than stellar start, but they have a strong track record of success. But yet they were, the announcers like, well, you know what? Front office is really going to have to make some difficult decisions. They're looking at their AAA team to see who might be able to offer some help. Which again leads me to conclude that there's some truth to what Tim put out there, that the teams may get off their own plan based upon some early season stumbles.
Well, I don't disagree with that. It's just that, okay, let's say the Cardinals bring up some guys from their farm team that they were considering anyway, and they have great seasons, and then they turn around and fade at the end, or the opposite, they don't make those moves and they bring them up and they have good Septembers. It doesn't. I guess all I'm saying is that no matter which way you go, perhaps you're going to win the same amount of games, and
math is math.
It's how you're playing leading into the playoffs.
Well, certainly that's possible if you go with the assumption that those players will have a net benefit on the roster. But I think which is possible. But I think what's also possible is you bring up players, you displace some veterans who may be off to rough starts, and then you're kind of casting the die there that they're not going to have a great season, or you're going to permanently disrupt their flow, and then you're going to vacillate between younger players and veteran players. And you're going to be an unsettled lineup and an unsettled roster into May. Whereas if you say, you know what, the team that we broke camp with is the team that we thought we had the best opportunity to win with, and despite 2 weeks of struggle, we're going to stick to that plan. That's where I think that managerial side comes in.
Okay, but it's at the same time you do those moves and you make those moves in September. And now you've become unsettled let's say you've won the division by 10 games, and you bring up the kid in September and he takes the place of the veteran and he gets hot, and you go into the postseason. Do you all of a sudden put that veteran back in, or do you go with the hot hand?
Well, I don't think that I'm not sure that I see contending teams bringing up young players and giving them
that's a good
significant
point.
roles
Right.
Good
in
point.
September.
On the lower side. The fact is, I'd be interested to see. I know to me, in general, and I haven't studied it by any means, but in general, it seems like once you get a 2 weeks in is a little early, but once you get a month, month and a half in, it doesn't seem like the placement shifts a whole lot in baseball. It seems like a lot of it gets settled. Obviously, there's a team here that makes a run. There's a team here that falls. But I'm looking again. We're talking 15 games in, and I could easily see the NL East finishing exactly like it is right now. There's is Colorado going to win? 2 out of every 3 games? Probably not. There's going to be variables, but it seems like the beginning, just in baseball more than any other sport, it's mental and attitude matters, and it seems like that does, for the most part. It's not a perfect science, but it does, run itself throughout the course based on starts a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's a sport that things play out in a time frame that is very different than most other sports. And it's weird because the game is played every single day, and maybe that's why ruts can be so strong as opposed to a sport that's played every other day, every third day, every week. And so when I think about baseball and I think about the human factor, it's not all mathematics. There is math that helps identify certain things, but I do believe that attitude, that emotional component, that essentially is what a manager manages by now, and that's why the manager sitting in the bench in the dugout area is really managing attitudes and managing emotions more than anything else, right? Clint Hurdle is a great example, Greg. I listen to him talk, and I feel like he is a life coach. The way he talks, the words he chooses to use, the way he talks about what's happening at any given time, it's so much about emotional strategy as opposed to game strategy. It's almost as if the game strategy piece is handled. And then bringing the young kids up, that seems to be more of a financial transaction, unless it's a essential case of need. But for me, I think we've got 10% of the season in play already, which kind of shocked me when I really kind of thought about it that way, that 1/10 of the season is already done, already in the books.
Well, I'm screwed.
But, I think the emotional component is good. And Greg, you talked about something that I think really applies to fantasy really well. As you said, look, this is the team I think I can best win with. You're the GM. And now I'm taking a look at this from a fantasy perspective and saying, look, this is the team that I started the season with. And I told you last week I wasn't comfortable with my team. I was unsettled. I know what I wanted to do. I know what the goal is. I know what I have set up, but I know I have to continue to work. And I wonder if there are GMs in real baseball that think that way. And then also from a fantasy perspective, are we all kind of doing that? I mean, Jack and I made moves. We're both feeling unsettled about our team.
Yeah, I think there are GMs who do that, and I think my beloved Pirates are a perfect example of that type of general manager strategy. As we know, Marte's down now for 80 games, performance-enhancing drugs, and the logic would be that up comes Austin Meadows, our top outfield prospect, but I have a real sense that the Pirates have already written this year off. They're only a few games under 500, and just 2 weeks ago they were at least talking in terms of believing they could contend for at least a wild card. But based upon their moves, I really can only conclude that they've given up. And so what's that? That's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they're not going to bring up the players who offer them the best chance to win. And they might even start to ease off on their best pitchers for fear of injury. You know how cautious major league teams are now with pitch counts and injury prevention. And so they're not going to put it all out there now they're going to be content to let their younger arms have restful seasons so that they can be fresh for next year.
That's an interesting thing. You had talked last week about the potential of Kutch moving based on what they're doing. And it sounds like, as someone who watches, over 100 Pittsburgh games a year and obviously follows the press, you think that they really are there. And that is a really weird team. If you want to talk about a statistical anomaly on this one, Joe, every series they've either swept or been swept.
That's bizarre.
So they swept the Cubs in Chicago, and then unfortunately lost today and have lost three in a row to St. Louis. So they, it is such a strange team to break down. And I think, Greg, it's going to be interesting to hear your take on the Buccos as we go through the season and what really happens. And maybe we even get Jack's take. I mean, Jack obviously is the only one of us with professional general managing experience of a professional team. So it'd be interesting to get his take on it too. But to me, that's a really interesting take. And I'm sorry about Marte. That's depressing. And, it's actually depressing to hear some of the other players talk about him too. I mean, not happy, but does that bleed over into fantasy? Jack, you said you had shares in him in another league.
Yeah. And I actually had, I have Marte and Polanco in another league, and was trading. I was involved in a trade, and it ultimately came down to which of those two guys I was going to give up, and went back and forth and back and forth. I'm not a big Pirates guy. I don't really like either of them, to be honest. I don't know how the hell I got them both. But I even went to the point where I called my brother, and who's a big Pirates fan, and said, "What should I do?" And of course, I traded Polanco. So,
well, that was the right decision in the moment. He's definitely the better player.
Yeah, two days ago, it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not too excited about it. You never know what's going to happen in fantasy. It's an interesting. He must have found Barry Bonds' old secret locker. Yeah.
I think the Pirates leadership has almost a cynicism now, where they might see this as a blessing in disguise, because it allows them to move Kutch back to center, which, let's face it, if they're marketing him for a trade before the deadline, his ability to demonstrate that he's not really lost it in the field completely is only going to be beneficial. So with Jung Ho stuck in Korea and now Marte on the shelf, I think they'll shut down Glasnow, send him down to AAA, and not bring up Meadows, and showcase Kutch in the hopes of trading some prospects to refill the chest for future years.
I agree with him. In fact, I had picked them up. Someone dropped them after the draft. I picked them up as a backup staff, and now I plan on dropping them as well. Sorry.
As well you should.
This just in, Travis d'Arnaud is injured. Yeah, not unusual. That's even quicker this year than usual.
More impressive than that is, as you guys can see, another Tim trade come across the wire. And Tim, I would just like to congratulate you. Every year you do more and more things that impress me, and the ability to trade Mark Reynolds to anyone right now is just kudos, man. Kudos. I know there were other guys involved. And I'm not saying that he got a raw deal. You gave some other, but it still works.
No, I mean, this was purely done. I actually sent him a note and said, look, I looked through all the teams, and I saw that who needed first base, and who does not have a backup at first base. And so I took Mark Reynolds, who is a perfect backup, and Trey Mancini, who is having a phenomenal start, young guy, 25 years old, I don't think he's going to be an A player, maybe a B plus player, but not an A player, but could be. So, but I don't want to take a chance on him. I've got AJ Reed, I've got Cody Bellinger, so I didn't really need him, and I couldn't see a spot for him on the big league club consistently, and I didn't want to sit there and hope for a trade. And then I also gave him a young player too.
Verdugo,
who's, this guy's a stud. He's a stud outfielder for the LA Dodgers. And, again, probably a B plus player, not an A player, but someone that, could do really well and could be up at the big league club pretty soon. And the little twist on it was Ke'Bryan Hayes was taken the pick before me in the league, and I made a big show of it. And I thought, I'll bring this back up to LJ sometime later because he's going to know I made a big show of it. And so I mentioned that in the note, and for some reason he took it. I had a very low, I thought there was maybe a 2 out of 10 chance he was going to take it, but I just had to sit out.
Because he thinks Mark Reynolds is going to still have a job in 2 weeks when Ian Desmond and David Dahl come back. That's why he took it. Well, and again, I'm not saying that the two guys you gave, I have
yeah.
Without Mark Reynolds, it might be a good deal. But yeah, Mark Reynolds, in my opinion, has zero value in a very short time.
Fair enough.
And good trade.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I've got my eyes on some other youngsters out there that I want to put into my minor leagues. This is not a thing. I'm not trying to make it a thing where a trade goes off on our. This is the second time, right?
Stop making trades while you're doing the podcast.
God, I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified of just losing out to everyone else that's gaining ground on me. I have to stay ahead of everybody else.
That's it. We should get back at him, Joe. Why don't you give me Will Myers real quick?
I don't think so.
I've been trying for 1.5 years to get Will Myers on my team.
Hey, listen, I've had him on my roster for 80 games a season for several years. I'm going to get some use out of that bastard.
You deserve it. Exactly. You deserve it.
I wish he was doing it for the Red Sox right now.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Greg. Great insight on the Pirates. I really found it very interesting to hear you talking about the Pirates and potential ways they may go. It's going to be a fun team for us to watch. And I may ask you some more stuff as we go along about what you think's happening, what the strategy is behind the scenes, what you're picking up from your sources, what you're seeing on the field. It's an interesting franchise. For years, they were horrible. And then about 10 years ago, right, they've really become a very, very fun team. And then having lived, within walking distance of the stadium for a couple of years, I really fell in love with your team. And I hope they really do find a way to turn around and get back up there and win and beat the damn Cubs and Cardinals.
Yeah, me too. They're like being diagnosed with a chronic illness. When you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, you really become a self-taught expert on that illness. So, I'll be happy to provide my insight.
I just got to tell you, as a passionate fan of my team, that was the most depressing clinical analysis of a team in April that I've ever heard.
It's grim reality, John Jaso started in right field for the first time in his.
It makes me want to trade Will Myers to you just to ease your pain.
In his professional career, I mean, Jaso was never played outfield as a professional until today.
I get it.
Hey, Greg, just so you know, Joe did sneak in on some of the masterclass of art of the trade, and he actually was attempting to use one of those techniques, I think, right there. So, yeah. So just want you to know, I know you were at technical difficulty and could not pop into it.
Yeah.
I promise you, I don't mean that.
I love surprises.
Yeah. If you do get Will Myers, give me a call, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember who gave you Mazzara. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Tim has 30 points against me right now, and Encarnacion isn't even playing. You are absolutely destroying me.
If it wasn't for Freddie Freeman, I'd have a chance in this game.
Harper's got a 4 tonight.
Freddie fucking Freeman.
Stanton and Harper are 7 for 7 with a double, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. 4 runs scored and 3
Chris, how's this for Jack? How's this for depressing? Your brother is killing me, even though he's left Marte in the lineup because he has no one else to replace him with, seemingly.
No, he has no choice in our league.
I know.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. But he's still killing me. Besides
That's
having a
it.
suspended player in the starting lineup.
You cannot get beat with missing a guy. That would not be good. And he didn't. I don't think he didn't get any points before he left, did he?
No. It's well on its way to coming to that.
If you get beat with a 0 in his lineup, you will be ridiculed.
I hear it. I'll deserve it.
I'm really curious. You guys spent all that time talking about how Pops won't do anything and I'm curious how much of that conversation led to both of you making trades with Pops.
Mine was not necessarily making it with Pops in particular. For me, I was actually looking at my minor leagues. There were guys that I wanted. I didn't have room, and I have an exposed flank when it comes to my bench. And we'd had a long conversation that about players and players that are how players are valued, and I really undervalued steals. And so even though the conversation, Joe, you let me know that the conversation we had about your philosophy was completely false, I actually learned in talking about that completely false interpretation of your philosophy was that Billy Hamilton actually could have some value in the team. If the team continues to hit and he continues to get on base, he is going to overperform. And when I looked at that, he was ranked in the mid-30s for an outfielder, and mid-20s for an outfielder in our league is incredibly valuable. And so I just kind of put pen to paper, did a little math, and said, you know what? Why don't I take a flyer on this guy? And he's a guy. He's been passed around the league quite a bit, and he's got really no intrinsic. A lot of people really don't value him at all. And I thought, is this one of those guys? This kind of post type sleeper that, could actually come in handy for 2 or 3 weeks. And so I threw it out there on a flyer, and, Pops took it. And I actually think it was a good deal for Pops. So
yeah, I think it was. I was surprised that you wanted Hamilton. Yeah, I think he's in danger of being pushed out of everyday duties, though. They got some minor league outfielders who I think are due for a call-up, especially if they keep doing well.
I think if I'm not incorrect, I believe he's hitting 300 right now, which he's never done. But the story has always been that if he did, I mean, he has, the guy was pretty valuable without getting on base. So somehow he didn't get on base and still was able to steal, a multitude of bases. So, if he does continue to hit that well, he could be very valuable. I don't think he will, and I don't believe in the rest.
Yeah, no, that is, I think that's totally legit. And it's one of those things that I thought, wow, let me see, because I probably do have a little too much from the power department. And, when I have a team that is full of 260 hitters, that's going to create some real challenges for me. So yeah, the Billy Hamilton, here we go. Steals, man. Steals, the new homers. I'm actually kind of taking a contrarian view.
The other big pickup there, and somebody that I had high on my list, didn't have the balls to do it in the draft, and then watched him. And for some reason, I thought he was going to end up on Mike's dad's team, and that always makes it a little better for me because he can only do so much damage. And then Mike picks up Eric Thames, and that if that guy could end up being the real deal, currently the top fantasy player in our league, score-wise after a couple of weeks. Again, it's early, but I had some love for that guy.
Many of us do. Okay, well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with a segment called The Art of the Trade. Welcome to the first installment of our Master Series on the Art of the Trade. In this series, owner and league founder Jack will take us through the often complicated negotiations all fantasy owners need to master if they want to fly the championship flag. This is a multi-part series where he'll be teaching us about the fake hesitant approach, the kill 'em with kindness approach, the beat them down approach, and many others. Lesson 1, the diversion approach. Okay, Jack, in today's lesson on the art of the trade, we're going to talk about the diversion approach. So what the heck is the diversion approach, and why would I need to use a diversion approach when it comes to trading in fantasy baseball?
Okay, so the diversion approach is something that I was ultimately forced to come up with. I was very successful in a number of trades early in the league, and got to the point where other owners were hesitant to trade with me. So if I would utilize another type of approach that we'll talk about, which is the direct approach, and just simply go after a guy and say, hey, I would like to trade you Fred McGriff for Gary Sheffield. They would immediately overvalue Gary Sheffield, and what does Jack know? And he's won every trade so far, so on and so forth. So the diversion approach is something I devised, which you would essentially have a guy in mind that you're focused on, that you would like, but instead you start the conversation based on another player on their team. Generally, it's better if it's somebody that they feel you have interest in already. So sometimes it will be say a Philadelphia Philly that I have no interest in, but because he's a Philly, they expect me to. So the concept obviously is you start the process, you make the phone call, you say, hey, was looking at your team, and I really, Pat Burrell, looks like he's ready to go on a hot streak. I was just wondering if you were interested in moving him. Do you have any interest in him? Maybe I could do this, I could do that. I got prospects, what have you, and then get into the conversation. It does take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. There's sometimes a want to jump the gun and go straight for your guy, but again, a lot of back and forth in the diversion trade. Every now and then.
This isn't something that I mean, when you say get into the conversation, basically there's a setup, right, to get in the conversation, and it's to talk about someone that you've already thought they are going to think you have interest in. Is that correct? Just to
Correct.
Get that conversation going?
Correct. So,
okay.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that they feel you have interest in. That just helps it. It helps disguise the diversion, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I have spent, I've utilized this to the point where I've gone through literally 5-6 different players or player combinations before I even brought up the guy that I was actually after. Well, how about Burl for this guy? Well, no, not quite. Well, what about this guy and this guy? And this guy, maybe if we squeezed him in, and just a back and forth situation, and done correctly, and there is an art to it. Done correctly, you essentially happenstance the player that you targeted the entire time into the conversation. You know what? You're right. This, that's not fair. This wouldn't work out this way. That, as much as I would like Burl, what about Freeman? And I know I'm going from the 90s but just to put some guys out there. So what about this guy? What if we did this and this for this guy? It helps to, and a lot of times, and we'll go over quite a few different types of trading approaches, and many times you'll combine them. So it helps a lot if you're in a position to overpay with this approach. So this would be a situation where I finally bring up the guy that I'm after, again, as nonchalantly as possible. But now all of a sudden, I've been offering him Neil Walker, and then now all of a sudden I'm talking about Jason Kipnis or LeMahieu or somebody with a little bit more value. And a lot of the times, if you combine those two, then the focus goes to the jump on your side, the jump of what they're receiving, as opposed to why the hell did he all of a sudden ask me for Michael Brantley when we were talking about Justin Upton this whole time.
So yeah, it's a delicate balance. It sounds like you have to be really engaged in this conversation, right? Can you do it via the texting or email, or is this something that you think?
Yeah, very, very difficult. You can email and texting. You could, I guess, under the right circumstance. It's a phone call situation or a face-to-face. Phone call is the best because, again, a direct approach. Hey, I got this guy. You want this guy? You can do it through text, through email, through carrier pigeon. There's not a whole lot there. In this particular approach, the diversion approach, voice inflection is a huge part of it. To hear the response, from the other owner, and like I said, the inflection in the response will often bring you one way or the other. Will bring me to this guy or that guy. There's been plenty of times where I had this diversion approach set up. And as I mentioned, I try to overpay at the end of it, and I had a guy in mind, and I was really willing to overpay. And then all of a sudden, through talking to him, because I had him on the phone, because of the inflection, all of a sudden I realized I didn't have to do that. I was going to scoop this up with half of what I thought I was going to give. So again, it can be done through text, but much more difficult, much easier to do over the phone.
Sense of a timeline, is this something that typically you're able to have one conversation, close the deal on that conversation, or is this typically a multi-day, or does it depend on the owner and you and kind of how the conversation's going? Any insight there? And then what are some things to watch out for? So you're engaged in this. You're talking about being patient. Don't jump the gun. Don't spook the other owner. Are there some things that you have to really kind of worry about?
Well, I when I mention patience, I do it from my mindset, which means don't ask for the guy in the first 30 seconds. Get at least 10, 15 minutes into the conversation. I generally, in these type of deals, will not try to extend it. I will try to get it done in a phone call. I could see somebody with a little more patience and extending it over some time. You probably even do better, assuming obviously the more time you give it, the more possibility of that targeted player hitting 2 home runs in a game and just disappearing from possibility. So the diversion approach also is a timely approach. You obviously to try that with you for Bryce Harper today would probably not make much sense. But to go after for you to have tried it with me for Cabrera 4 days ago, that it would have made a lot more sense. So obviously, it doesn't work very well if you're going after a guy that's on fire. But if you have the patience and the guy doesn't go nuts during the 2 or 3 days that you're waiting, then yeah, I could see that actually working to your advantage sometimes. I tend to get it done in a phone call. I'll get it done or I'll blow it up by the time I'm done talking usually.
Anybody who plays fantasy sports has got to appreciate what you're laying out for us here. Looking forward to the next several installments of The Art of the Trade. Really appreciate you doing this. Thank you, Jack.
Of course. Thank you.
So, Greg, you're a vegetarian. Is that political, or is that health reasons? Or I see your beautiful pictures on Instagram. It actually makes me think, you know what? Maybe I'd be a vegetarian. But what's the deal? What gives? Where did you learn how to cook like this?
Well, it's a little known fact about me, Tim, that I was a vegetarian for 10 years throughout my 20s and into my 30s, and then I got away from it. But it's true, I've recently re-embraced veganism. It's not political. I'm much less political about it or stringent about it than I was before, but it really comes down and it's connected to sports in a strange sort of way. So
interested. I'm buying. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of my greatest pleasures in life is running. I'm not fast anymore, but I was at one time fairly competitive as a runner, and it's just something that's always been a part of my life, and it's important to me. But last July, I tore my meniscus in my knee, and so I struggled for months with it. I tried to rehab it without surgery, and I eventually had to have surgery. And so my goal has been to get up and running, and it's been slow progress. And, you guys know me. I'm what in the running community they call a Clydesdale, a bigger guy, over 200 pounds. And I realized that if I intend to run again, that I need to lose weight. And so the easiest path in my mind to doing that is to go vegan. And so I decided, basically it was a trade-off. I like running. I enjoy running more than I enjoy meat. And so that was the most expedient way to do it. Now, there's also a lot of, it's funny how fate speaks to you. As I was coming to this decision, my daughter announced to me that she had become interested and wanted to become a vegan. As I was contemplating the health benefits of it, a colleague of mine at work was extolling the benefits of veganism. They pointed me to a documentary called Forks Over Knives on Netflix. Great, interesting documentary. And I've also had some family recently with some health issues that in retrospect, the scientific evidence is there to suggest that this would help me with my genetic makeup avoid similar challenges as I age. And so sometimes the universe just taps you on the shoulder and says, Craig, this makes sense for you at this point in time. And so that's what I did. As far as the cooking, I grew up in a restaurant owning family, so I'm comfortable in the kitchen, but I am not an intuitive chef. And the reason that I take such pleasure in photographing those meals that I prepare and shamelessly sharing them is because I'm going from cookbooks, and I'm usually going from cookbooks with pictures. And so, if I can make some close approximation of what I'm seeing in the cookbook, and it tastes okay, then I consider myself a success. And so I'm measuring dutifully every ingredient so that I can create something that's edible. And so far, so good. I'm having a good time with it, and I'm losing weight.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I remember back on the East Coast in Richmond, you were doing a lot of the longer runs. I don't know if you were marathoning at that point, but
half marathon.
Yeah. And I know that's the lightest that you were when I knew you. But these pictures and the way you do it, where you have all the ingredients, and then you have kind of typically a couple of pictures as the ingredients come together, and then you have the finished dish. The finished dish, really, you plate really well. And I said, wow, this looks appetizing. This looks really, really nice. And it looks like there's a lot of different flavors. You have a lot of different colors in your dish. So good on you on that, man. Good on you. And I'm glad that you're not upset if I have a cheeseburger with you the next time we go out for beers, right?
Not at all, man. Yeah, no, I'm not political about it at all. And back in the day, I used to be very strict on myself, and I would kind of spite myself. But now, if you're kind enough to invite me to your home and there's some non-vegan dish, that you offer me, I'm going to enjoy it. If I feel like having sushi once in a while, I'm gonna have it, you know. But overall, this is a lifestyle that for me makes it very difficult to cut corners. It makes it more difficult for me to eat in an unhealthy way, and so it's a net benefit to me, you know. So it's also I can run.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, moving on to a few different things here. Thank you, Greg.
Sure.
A couple of things going on in the league. We talked about the A division, the B division, the Champions division, and I think on this podcast we were all enthusiastic about changing the name. And guys, I hate to tell you, but 4 of the 8 votes are for A division, B division, and Champions division. That it is far and away now. There's 2 people who haven't voted yet, and the Bonds division, McGuire division, and Griffey division still could tie for A division, B division. We got the Rocky, Bullwinkle, and Boris divisions did get 1 vote. We got the Burt, Ernie, and Grouch divisions got 1 vote. I'm really surprised the John West, Tom Byron, Peter North division did not get any votes, not a single vote cast for that.
Too old a reference.
Yeah, who conceived of that? That was I must say, I'm no prude, but I was like, wow, that is an interesting recommendation or nomination.
Yes,
should I say?
Jack came up with that.
Wow.
I love it. Jack got in trouble for that. Awesome.
Was that right?
Nope. So
damn it, I'm sorry, Jack.
Jack, now you know something. So the Alliance division, the Resistance division, the Imperial division, I thought for sure Chris would give us at least a vote on that. Captain division, Tennille division, and Muskrat division, nothing.
Absolutely not.
The Gin division
seceded from the league if that had been the names.
It elicited a chuckle. I appreciate the suggestion.
Yep. The Bitch division, Butch division, Stud division, which I actually thought, is this politically incorrect to put up there or not? But Pops was pretty emphatic about having something called the Bitch division, so I filled in the rest. The Gin, Tonic, and Juice divisions, and then frankly, the Mr. Brown, Mr. Pink, and the Champions division, I like that. I was pretty cool with
I like
that.
it too.
I think one of the owners, Eldon, had no idea where that came from, and that just, I love Eldon, but come on, man, like if you don't get that reference,
take it easy, Mr. Pink.
Right? Like, how do we let you in the league?
So are you saying I screwed up by voting for the Rocky and Bullwinkle and Boris divisions?
No.
Did I screw everything up?
I don't think you screwed anything up. I think that that 40% of the league feels strongly that A division, B division, Champions division is how we should be. So I'm going to give it one more day, and then.
How many votes are we missing?
We're missing 2 votes. We have 8 total. So if
you got 50% of 8,
if the other 2 go to Bonds, McGuire, and Griffey, then we would have a runoff. But the Burt, Ernie, Grouch, Rocky, Bullwinkle, Boris.
The A division, B division, Champions division is obviously for a reason that because we're putting the better teams in one division, the other 2 being equal. So some of these names don't show that, and was that the idea? Like
this, like Tupac division, Notorious B.I.G. division, they're both dead. But Jay-Z is still alive and well and doing great, right? That was the whole point, right? So
about Burt, Ernie, and the Grouch.
Well, Burt and Ernie. I mean, there's a lot of things there with Burt and Ernie you could go with, and then Grouch is, Grouch. It actually got a vote. I mean, that was pretty much.
So is the Bonds division the Champions division, or is that it's just kind of up there?
No, Griffey's the
champion because he did it.
He's clean.
He's clean. Right.
There you go.
It sounds like, Jack, maybe you haven't voted yet.
I have now.
Oh, wait.
Tom Byron, here we come.
I would have voted for the Mr. Brown, Mr. Pink, but I know it was a wasted vote, so much like...
So, all right. So we actually there is one person who has not voted, and that one person could either... we could have a runoff, or in reality, at that point, I think we would go with the Bonds, McGuire, Griffey, at least for this year.
I might change my team name to Mr. Blonde after all this Reservoir Dogs.
That's beautiful.
Mr. Blonde.
So
There you go.
trying to bring some fun into the league, just have a
me
good time.
too.
And you guys are, there you go. And you guys are, everyone has a lot of stuff going on. So one of the things I do is I like to change the league picture, and I put up Raleigh Fingers this week. And in reality, just marveling over his facial hair. I mean, he that mustache is phenomenal. And baseball is a sport that I know in hockey you have the playoff beards, right? And in football you have the
Freddie Freeman. Sorry.
That's okay, Joe.
Killing me.
Geez, I think I predicted at the beginning of the year that Freddie Freeman was just going to suck.
Somebody did.
That was me. Wow, he's having a good night. So, what is it with baseball, and why is it that we see some of the most creative facial hair in baseball? I mean, football, you've got the dreads, right, and mustaches. Hockey, you got the beards and stuff. But, I just think that, it is it's a fun expression. It's really neat. And, are there any guys that you remember that just had facial hair that you thought, all right, man, like I'm going to go that way, or that's really freaking cool?
Kevin Youkilis had a magnificent beard.
Yeah, I liked Brian Wilson, the reliever from the Giants too. Like
Good one.
like he had that jet black beard. Like he must have been combing in like black dye to make it so dark. It was incredible.
And you have the Quisenberry 70s porn mustache. Raleigh. I was always a fan of Raleigh Fingers. That was a neat one. Who else? Gossage.
Goose Gossage. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's the beards, though. Yeah. Now the beards seem to be the hip thing, the big thing.
Well, you got like Manny and Kutch in the old days with their dreads. I think to your point, Tim, like baseball players, unlike other athletes, I mean, I know they spend a lot of time together in season and other sports, but those guys, it's like, summer camp for 6 months with those baseball players in the clubhouse day in and day out. And so I think that lends itself to the creativity. The Pirates have a relief pitcher they picked up from the Nationals last year, Felipe Rivero. And he's got basically a crew cut with like a shock of bleach blonde, like mohawk fuzz that just protrudes out the back of his cap. It's quite unique.
Who was the I'm just trying to think of like the new beard epidemic that Jason Worth. To me, there were a bunch of guys with normal facial hair playing baseball, and then there was Jason Worth. Am I missing? Was he the first guy to start doing this, or was there guys? I can't think of anybody before that. Anyway, with the big.
No, yeah. I think he set the trend, and then like Keuchel and Charlie Blackmon jumped on board with it. And then you got the pitchers, though, the guys with not the facial hair, but the long hair, like Lincecum, DeGrom, yeah.
Yeah, that's become a new thing, too. DeGrom, his hair, you would think it would affect him. He has so much freaking hair. There'd be some effect on eyesight or even his arm at that point. You got hair halfway down your damn back. It's interesting. Looks like one of the Hanson boys.
Mm.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? I mean, you think about the personalities, and the sport of baseball. There's no helmet, face mask in the way in between. What you're seeing with your player. Feel like that you can have a closer connection with them, and it's also, I think, when you're playing 6 months out of the year, it's a grind. You're playing every day. That there's actually an entertainment element to the facial hair for the other players on your team. that it's not just, maybe with Raleigh Fingers, he really spent a lot of time on that. I think that was something that was more about him. But I always look at the pitchers in the bullpen, and that looks like one of the most fun places to watch a baseball game from ever. There's always seems like there's something going on there. Those guys are spending most of the game just goofing around at a level of readiness and looseness that I can't even imagine having to get myself into, and having a good time out there. I mean, I think if I had the ability to spend a year just with one team and to watch every single game, that I would hope that I could watch it from inside the bullpen, because I think there would be the game, and then there'd be the bullpen antics and the intricate pranks and jokes. And I mean, they have jokes that probably run 2 or 3 months long, as they're going through it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. There's such a high proportion of inactivity in baseball, right? Such a long season. And if you're in the bullpen, if you're a starter, you're only playing every 5 days. If you're in the bullpen, you're playing 50 to 60 to 70 games, or you're a bench guy, you're playing for 1 inning as a defensive replacement. So if you add up the time that they spend from the time they arrive at the clubhouse every day to the time they depart, and then you calculate what proportion of that time are they actually moving around, engaged in some sort of activity, it seems to me that leaves them a lot of free time for hijinks and for watching their hair grow.
Right? Hijinks. I think that's a perfect way of saying that. And you think about just how, how fun that must be. I mean, I guess it could be a grind, but it doesn't seem like it. And, I think television producers do such a good job. You'll notice, and Greg, I know you watch enough baseball to see this, and there are times when we can't watch more. I've actually been able to watch more. On every broadcast, there'll be a few times where they'll zero in on what's going on in the bullpen, and I absolutely love that about this sport. There's so many nooks and crannies that you can get lost in.
Somebody will have a soda on their hat, and they don't realize it. Their teammates are laughing at them. Yeah, hopefully they don't get too bitter. I mean, every time they see their wire transfers for their weekly or monthly paychecks, that should take the edge off the ennui, I would hope so.
Guys, well, great segment. I really appreciate that. I know this went a little further off, but I certainly enjoy talking to you, and I love that we have this and we can actually connect and talk about some of the other stuff that maybe isn't directly related to fantasy baseball, but certainly is related to us as people and what we like and what we enjoy. So I certainly wish you all a great night and a great week. And Jack, I hope I can get a win against you in the Champions Division.
Oh, so that's done. Not to start a new conversation, but did you guys see this this thing with Anthony Rizzo in second base?
No. Why is he playing second base? Boy, Madden loves to do crazy shit, doesn't he?
Well, it's the shifts. There's this. It's now become an argument of somebody. But as of right now, according to CBS Sports, Anthony Rizzo has played 2 games at second base. I guess they.
Wow.
They move him over when the Cubs defend sacrificed bunts. They have the second baseman move to first, with Rizzo ditching his first baseman's mitt for 1 play to field the bunt, and they qualify that as.
Are you serious?
So
all right. So we have the Council of Commissioners on this podcast or this broadcast right now. So, commissioners, are we going to let Rizzo qualify for second base if he plays 9 plays there all year?
It's 5 games is all he needs, so he needs 3 more, and he becomes a second baseman as per.
I don't know that we can change that.
Well, but how do you define a game? Like 1 play or 2 plays a game. That's
you have 1 at bat. You've played in a game.
Up to CBS Sports, and this time I'm not sure that that's the right case. I agree.
You're going to play Pablo Sandoval at second base.
Well, then you get into these teams that shift. You got third baseman playing on the opposite side of second base sometimes with players. Does that make them a second baseman now? Like. It's
is Chris Bryant a shortstop?
Right, exactly, right. You're going to get into some weird situations there. it looks like maybe he won't play 3 more and it won't matter, but he's got 2 already in 2 fucking weeks. So
well, you know what I think, and again, I'm not saying this just because I don't want to have Anthony Rizzo against me as a middle infielder, but we should defer to the box score. If the box score shows the player as having shifted, sometimes a player will shift from right to left in the course of the game. If the box score, the official box score shows that Rizzo shifted positions, then yeah, I would say sure.
But do we even have the ability to do that?
We should check and see. So, and it does come, and this is something we've always done. That has always been part of the league, and thankfully we've had a pretty good group of people that's never become, but it's always been what makes sense, like what is the best for the league. So even if CBS Sports ends up saying that Anthony Rizzo can play second base, it's still something that we as a league would discuss, and the dude has literally played 2 at-bats at second. I guess it is second base. I don't know. It's interesting. Definitely something that we'll have to look at.
Yeah, I would defer to the official scorer, though. You know what I mean? If he doesn't get shifted to that position, he's not playing that position.
Yeah, I mean, because then what are you going to, every time whoever the Pittsburgh center fielder is that day runs into right field territory to make a catch, is he all of a sudden a right fielder? I mean, that's stupid because, but the shortstop runs across the diamond and catches the ball at first base.
Or you're right. Now? Or a catcher who backs up a play at first, Yeah.
Better example. Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll have to see. I don't know what games they're referring to, so I'm interested to see if they sure as hell have Rizzo listed at second base / first base.
Well, now that said, I could see Madden, in a late, especially in an extra inning game, I can see Madden saying, hey, you know what? We're depleted. Anthony, I need you to play the bottom of the 14th at second, And then that would be legit.
That's not what's happening. Him and Zobrist are literally switching spots for a play and then going back to it.
That's so strange.
I've never seen. Looking at a box score, it says Rizzo, and it even has like a weird dash before the second. If you look, it's April 17th is the game. It says Bryant, space 3B like normal. This says Rizzo, dash 2B dash 1B.
Oh, okay.
Which is odd that it has second base first, but then Zobrist, same thing, dash 1B dash 2B. So, I mean, friggin' Joe Madden, son of a bitch.
I would agree with that sentiment.
I actually, I like it. And the reason I like it is that we are progressing, right? We are looking at the game differently. There's shifts coming into it now. This is a game that has remained constant for many, 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 many years. And suddenly innovation is starting to percolate up. And I love innovation. I don't always welcome the chaos it brings to my life. However, that's kind of interesting when you think about, we always thought a first baseman is a first baseman in every situation, in every way. We even went to the official scorer, right? What does the official scorer say? And then Jack did the quick research, right? Yep. Actually, he's officially scored. And I think this is exciting. I think the shift is just another step in the progression of this game, and that hitters are going to have to change the way they approach hitting to beat the shift. And it's another evolution. And I really push back against people who say, oh, we should get rid of the shift. It's ruining the game. I think it's just the next step. And I think it's the ultimate competitive environment. And, the reality is on that play before the ball is pitched, he's playing second base.
So what's the difference between that and a shift? The fact that somebody else took his spot? If Zobrist moved over to the right and Rizzo moved over to the right, is he playing second base then? Like Chris Bryant, when they shift, goes from third to where the stop is. And
Well, and Brian also goes into short right field.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we have a new position now too? Like do we create the new
The special outfielder in softball?
Yeah, and I agree, Tim. For baseball, I'm all for it. I have no qualms about it for baseball. It's just the implications on fantasy. That especially in a permanent league, it's not like, you know what I mean.
Well, I'll go on record saying I don't like innovation when it comes to baseball. And like in the example that Jack just gave, if Chris Bryant's playing short right field and he takes a grounder and throws to first, that's still a 6-3 putout. That's still third base to first baseman putout, because that's the position that Bryant is in on the scorecard. It's the official scoring of the game. And so even though Bryant's playing center field in a shift and he started at third base, that's still a 6-3 putout.
So I wonder what had Rizzo retrieved the bunt and thrown it to Sobris. I wonder how they.
I don't know. I don't know how it's scored. I want to see the official score.
3. It's a 3-4/4-3. That's interesting.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's definitely.
Well, if there's 2 infielders playing between second and first, or 3 infielders playing between second and first, so essentially 2 second basemen, could they turn a 4-4-3 double play? Fuck that.
I do believe that the next shift is going to involve an infielder playing shallow outfield. I do think that is going to be the next innovation in the shift. And we're already
be from Japan. It'll be a guy named Otani from Japan, right?
Yeah. So I think that's pretty interesting. But I'm all for it. I think that baseball in fantasy. Holy crap! If Rizzo gains eligibility, then maybe I should have traded Reynolds to Mikey. He might have needed a first baseman.
Yeah, I mean, you got it. Yeah, you have to be able to, but there's just general rules, and one of the general rules in fantasy is if a first baseman gains eligibility any fucking where else, it's valuable. If it's in the middle infield, it's ridiculous. So thinking that that he can play fucking middle info, that's it. I mean, and then does it become? Do other people start doing that?
Does it become vogue? Does my starting infield consist of Rizzo at first, Encarnacion at second, Big Poppy out of retirement at short?
Brera goes back to third.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mikey will like it.
Yeah. I mean, and Mikey has had Rizzo since he was in the minor leagues, right? I think even in San Diego.
Yeah,
I
I think he's had him for a while. I know he's had him for a while. So, but yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, the ultimate. When it comes down to it, ultimately, the site is the decipher. So if the site, based on the box scores, says that he plays second base, then he plays second base, unless as a league we all feel that it's a negative thing that would hurt the league at that point. I don't know that this is going to be the case in that situation, but for we've had situations in the past where it's just come down to what's best for the league, and we, like I said, been able to make decisions based on that. It happens. Shit happens. Got guys. I'm trying to think of a guy. There's a guy that played out of position. Who the hell was it, Tim? A few years back, and just somewhat ridiculous. I can't remember now, but it happens, and it's baseball. I mean, these guys, they're not that much. Encarnacion at shortstop is probably a bit of a reach, but a guy can play third. He can play. There's a lot of guys out there that should qualify for other positions in fantasy and don't, simply because there's a better guy playing that position on the team they're on. Trey Turner last year. So.
Well, I think if anything, if that does happen with Rizzo this year, I mean, I think the only fair thing to do would be to defer to CBS Sports and what their site, because to ask 9 other owners to pass judgment on something that will be to their disadvantage wouldn't necessarily.
Well, and it's not going to be just Rizzo if
season,
that happens. It's going to be a whole bunch of infielders.
You would think, and generally, and to that point, Greg, you're right. Generally, we try not to do things on the fly like that. If anything, we would go with what CBS says, and then in the off season, get together and make a decision. Does this make sense? Are we going to allow, but if it starts happening regularly, you're not going to go back and check every friggin' box score to see if he played 1 play, 2 plays. In fact, by looking at that, had I not read that article, I would have had no idea. By looking at that box score, Rizzo played second base. So,
guys, before we go, can I make one bold prediction that I wasn't able to make because my computer died on me? It's about Ohtani. So, Joe, you asked about which team Ohtani might end up playing for. I think the perfect fit, and if I were a betting man, I'd bet Mariners. I bet you that Suzuki, passes the torch to Ohtani, and Seattle would be a perfect market for him to do it because, first of all, they love Ichiro, and secondly, they're the type of team that I think, if anybody would say, you know what, we want this guy on the field every freaking day that we can get him on the field because he's going to be a draw for us. And so they would be the type of team that would sign him, and maybe he'd take an undervalued contract from a Mariners if Ichiro greased the rails a little bit.
Are you saying that the Mariners would do that because of their connections to Japan, and that so they believe that they could sell merchandise in Japan based on who this guy is? Because they have strong ties to Japan already.
Yeah. I guess merchandise, and just they have that legacy. I mean, they are the team that will, that the greatest Japanese-born player will be enshrined for the Hall of Fame. Let's face it, when Ichiro gets enshrined, he's going in as a Mariner. Besides Ken Griffey Jr. and maybe Edgar Martinez, but Ichiro's better than Edgar Martinez, as great as he was. He's probably the second most important Mariner is Ichiro. And I don't think that'll be lost upon a guy like Ohtani. And again, I think the big boys of the majors, the Cubs, the Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, they're gonna be willing to pay for Ohtani, but they're gonna see him as much more of a commodity to be managed and just used in the great. They don't need Ohtani to play right field for the Red Sox. You know what I mean? They don't need Ohtani to play in the outfield for the Dodgers. But the Mariners might say, you know what, we'll give you Cano type money, come play for us, and hell yeah, we'll let you start and we'll let you play right field on 4 or 5 days a week. I don't know. It just seems to make sense to me.
I like it.
So here's my other question. My other question is,
I would go with that as well. I like that thing.
It's a good take, right? Other question though, Greg, is would that be enough for you to say, hey Tim, let's take a road trip up to Seattle and see this Ohtani guy play? Would it cause so it would encourage you to buy a ticket?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'd love to go see the Mariners now. I love going to any ballpark. We can do that, next weekend. But wouldn't it be cool to go to like 2 games, see an Ohtani start on Saturday and strike 10 guys out, and then the next day, he hits a home run, steals a base, and makes a diving catch and right? Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool. That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good take. Thank you, gentlemen. And this has been wonderful. I had a lot of fun this week. I really appreciate it.
Well, mate, do you want to be in a psychobilly band?
I can't play any instruments.
It don't matter. Can you slag off the meteors?
Yeah, of course I can.
Oh, that's all right. You're in them, mate.
Right, let's go.